Blessings. Namaste.
Namaste.
Like a few of you may be familiar with that word, namaste, right? So, very powerful words, a word that's often heard in yoga classes, beginning and the end. Yoga classes. I discovered after taking some yoga classes and being interested in the process and what it all means, I dived a little deeper into the meaning of that word, which is probably aware it's a Sanskrit word. Literally means the divine light in you that is in me. I honor that in you. So, I honor that in each one of you today. And so privileged to be here speaking. So, a little bit about me. I know many of you. I know most of you, if not all of you, know my dad, who's the Reverend C. Bolen Sr. It's interesting because growing up, my mom and dad divorced when I was 8. So mom was typically carrying us to the Presbyterian church. And when we visit dad on the weekends, we go to the Unity Church. Talk about a dichotomy. It's like, wow, okay, so this church we sit in, typically in pews and read our hymnals and very structured, organized. And we go to Dad's church, which was in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Was Dad's first church, his first assignment. So, people are in there much like this congregation, hugging one another and feeling the love. It's like, as a child, I was like, wow, this is just weird. I don't understand this church. And so there was a little bit of a battle that would go on in my mind internally. Over time, however, I became familiar with the teachings of unity, and it began to speak with me, or to stick with me a little bit. So, fast forward to 2003, I experienced what I refer to as the dark night of the soul. My life was flipped upside down, lost everything. This intense chapter in my life. For about 5 to 6 years, I was in a very dark, depressed state of mind. And it was depression, and I woke up one morning. The message was that I felt here, not here, but here. 2 choices. 1, continue down the path that you're on, which will eventually lead to destruction. Or the other path, the path of least resistance. Thought about this a little while. About a week, struggled with it. Well, I would say to myself, the first one, the path that I've been on, the dark path, I know how to wear it. Right? It was like a coat of armor. It's comfortable. This other path I didn't know anything about. This path of least resistance. Okay? So I finally made a decision after, like I said, about a week of back and forth. Which one should I go? Chose the path of least resistance. That's the path I've been on since. It's a path that has definitely had some ups and downs and twists and turns, as life often throws us curveballs. But I've remembered this as I'm encountering those twists and turns and ups and downs of life. So that brought me to an increased awareness into what I call the nature of reality. A shift in consciousness occurred. It was at this time that I became very interested in learning about other faiths, other paths. So I felt I had a pretty good understanding of the Christian path. That's how I was raised. And then, of course, with Dad's teachings along the way, the New Thought, Ancient Wisdom teachings. And I discovered a video cassette. Does anybody still remember video cassettes? Put them in VCRs. Okay? The younger generation probably like, VCRs, VHS, no clue what you're talking about here. Yeah, so discovered one of Deepak Chopra. And I of course heard Dad talk about Deepak and his teachings, but this one was what I just spoke earlier from the Rig Veda. And he does this. And discussed the Vedas. So I was like, wow, okay, now what are the Vedas? What is this? So I got books on Vedas and the Upanishads, which are, of course, Hindu sacred texts. So I studied Hinduism and Buddhism, Taoism, and all the isms. Christianity, of course, Islam, read the Quran. So I found that there's a common theme with all of these paths. That's love. That message is there intertwined in these paths, teachings. That's what I love about unity. That we as a community honor all paths and know that there is one source, the divine. What I refer to now is the reality with a capital R. The all that is, that ever was, and that always will be. It was also about this time that I became reintroduced to a book that has been extremely important to my dad and many other people around the world. The book is called A Course in Miracles. I received this book when I was 18 years old as a high school graduation gift from my dad. I remember opening this book for the first time and reading about 2 pages. And I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. Put it on the bookshelf. And there it remained for many, many years. Until one day, again in the spring of 2009, a good friend of mine told me about this book that he's reading. And he's receiving so much information, and it's changing his life. Like, what's the book? It's called A Course in Miracles. I said, man, I've tried this book. I've tried to read this book many years ago. I said, it's the big blue book, right? Like lots of pages, lots of words that are kind of difficult to understand. He said, yeah, that's the one. Okay. So I go back and I pick this book back up. And I read the introduction, and those of you who are familiar with the book, at the end of the introduction, there are the words, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. When I read that, I literally felt a shift here. Like, whoa, this is intense. I don't know what's happening, but I'm going to go with it. And so I did, and it provided me with it was more of a catapult into what I would study going forward. So that's a little bit about my story and how I've come more or less full circle around again, growing up with my dad and the teachings, not exactly knowing how to process those teachings, and now here I am in front of you guys. So yes, such a blessing to be here in front of you. I was introduced to this church, of course, by my dad, and immediately felt a warm energy here and connection, which is it's beautiful. Bring me to my next one. The passing, the transition of one of our community members, Tom. So I know it was spoken about earlier, but I just want to say that I remember speaking with Tom and interacting, and as you mentioned, a great love that I felt from him, energetically. And no, Gail talking about, you're talking about being, stoic and right. It's okay to allow and process your emotions. Let's take a meal. I'm still working on that. I'm still working through that process of, okay, I'm feeling this, how do I deal with it? Instead of before, just shut it down. Shut it down, stuff it down, whatever. Especially here in the West, often taught as boys, don't show your feelings, don't cry, and all of that. So, and I've learned, and I'm learning, that it's a process to do so. It's healthy. And you have a strong support system here, as you indicated, which is wonderful. It's a beautiful thing to experience. So just want to let you know about that. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Anybody want to know what today is besides February 2nd? Groundhog Day. Happy Groundhog Day. Or as in Georgia, I like to say, Happy General Beauregard Lee Day. Everybody familiar with the General? Yeah, the General. So, and I'm not sure, I forgot to check before I came in that the General saw a shadow. Does anyone know? No?
No.
Okay.
No, we went back in.
Went back in. So that would indicate 6 more weeks of winter there. See? Yeah. Well, we'll find out. Yeah, so the General is Georgia's, our own groundhog. Philadelphia, of course, has Punxsutawney Phil, which has anyone seen the movie Groundhog Day?
Yes. Love it.
Great movie. I've seen this movie a few times. Once, or a few times prior to what I call my shift in consciousness, and a couple of times after. And it's interesting, and I've seen different movies where this is the case. And now I look at it completely differently. Right? I see the spiritual meaning behind the movie now. A true spiritual meaning. Where the character that Bill Murray plays, he finally reaches a point where he's reliving this day again and again and again of detachment. Finally reached that point with, you know what? Okay. It's going to be the same day again. I might as well just detach from it, flow with it. And he decided, might as well do some good too. Might as well do some good deeds. So he did, and I looked at that, and I researched it a little bit, and those of you who are familiar with Buddhism, the term is bodhisattva. Bodhisattva. one who has decided to assist humankind on earth, the earth realm. And so that's how I think of that character now. He's a bodhisattva, doing these wonderful things. Title of my talk today, and by the way, I typically don't stand behind lecterns. It's a little, I feel detached from the community, so I'll be bouncing back and forth. Title of my talk today is Be the River, Not the Rock. Thought about this, and once it was introduced, or once I was invited to do a talk here, I thought about it and thought about it, and I thought, well, what's something that is important to me that is relatable? A good friend of mine back a few years ago, who I call my guru, Phil, who's taught me so many things. One day, just out of the blue, it was one of those days, it was kind of rough. It was a bit of a rough day, different things were happening, so he just, in passing, said, "Hey, Stephen, be the river, not the rock." Okay, that was all he said. And he would do that sometimes. Just throw out little aphorisms and quotes. So I did what I would do at that time, which was meditate on it. And like, okay, the river is something that flows, and the rock is something that resists the flow. That's how I thought about it. The river is always in motion, even when it appears to be very still. Because does anyone know where every river is trying to get to? The ocean. It's trying to just merge into that wonderful, vast ocean, which is amazing to me. It's an amazing thing to behold that. But that's where it's going. That's where it's headed. Regardless of where it is, that's its objective. Anyone familiar with Rumi? Wonderful Sufi poet. One of my favorites of his is, "You are not the ocean in a drop. You are the entire drop in an ocean." So it gives me comfort to know that, okay, I'm part of that whole thing. The river, for me now, is that flow of life that we're on. Each of us has a unique journey that we're on, and then we have a collective journey that we're kind of all on together. So as Phil mentioned this to me, I said, okay, I'm going to study this a little bit. I said, "Hey, Phil, remember when you told me a couple of weeks ago, be the river, not the rock?" "Yeah, I remember that." I said, "Could you please guide me a little bit, steer me into the direction of what this means?" He said, "Well, I'm not going to tell you exactly what it means, but I will tell you about a book that is important to me in my life. And the book is called the Tao Te Ching." Anyone familiar with that book? Yeah. Okay. This symbol that I wear is a Taoist symbol. It's also referred to as the yin yang. Okay? So Chinese in origin. And I picked up this book and I asked, I think it was my dad. I said, "Hey, Dad, you know this book, the Tao Te Ching?" He said, "Oh, yes." Okay, I would be interested in reading this. So found a translation. There are quite a few translations out there. But this one was very important, or very impactful for me. And as I'm reading this, there's 80 plus verses in the Tao, and it's constantly referring to this water, this flow. All right. So I became interested in how I could apply this to my life. And I started applying it by learning to detach, to allow whatever life throws. It can be a bit of a challenge at times. But I've kept it as a guide for my life. There's a Chinese term also it's called Wu Wei. Wu Wei. It's basically a contradiction of terms. So Wu is no, Wei is effort. It's one translation. No effort. No resistance. You could substitute it with many different words. So, and that's a very important principle in Taoism, which is again one of the many paths that I've studied along the way. This path of least resistance, this path that came to me. Again, I heard the voice here. Least resistance. There are many teachings that the masters have taught, but this is one they pretty much all agreed on. Jesus the Christ, Buddha, Krishna, to name a few. Lao Tzu, who was the credited author of the Tao Te Ching. This notion of just allowing, not resisting. Familiar with the phrase, what you resist persists. Wow. Again and again and again, I've had this lesson appear to me, just hearing it over and over, different ways, different people, different situations. And then when I get to a quiet space, sometimes that's a few minutes later, sometimes that's days later, and I recall that event. Oh, okay, there was resistance there. Okay, got it. Resistance. The water, I was listening to a Wayne Dyer YouTube. Technology is so amazing. It is so amazing because years ago, if I wanted to listen to Wayne Dyer, I'd have to go to Dad's and he'd go, hey Dad, do you have a Wayne Dyer cassette tape? So now I can go to YouTube and pull up a Wayne Dyer, talk on the Tao. Amazing. Anyway, discovered this recently, and he's talking about these principles and how it impacted his life. And I discovered that even though I've heard Dad talk about Wayne Dyer for many years, of course, his life journey, once he discovered that path of least resistance, and he talks about that quite a bit in the Tao Te Ching, of releasing what is not being attached to whatever. It's one of the Buddha's primary teachings. Don't be attached. Right? Just, hey, it's easy. Just don't be attached. I refer to that as simple, but not always easy. Until it is. So, and it's not for me yet. I can certainly tell you that straight up. That's an ongoing practice. But I'm getting better at every time, whatever that attachment may be. So, going back to the topic, be the river, not the rock. And I think about something vast. I haven't been there yet, but it's on my bucket list. To see the Grand Canyon. Has anyone seen the Grand Canyon? Okay, a few, yeah. My dad has been, my stepmother married, and they just say it's an absolutely amazing experience. I think about that, and it was the power of water that created this vast canyon. Amazing. The power of water can create something as vast as that, and can over time, smooth a stone over time. So I think that in closing that the opportunity that we have as humans on this earth plane, this dimension, to flow with life like a river. When the obstacles come up, and they always do, that are like the rocks, we can choose, we have the power to choose whether to go over the rock, around the rock, and continue our journey. Of course, there are times when we may want to say, well, we got out of the river for a little bit and stand on the side. Just stand here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going to watch the river, and that's kind of cool. I choose not to go down the river right now. That's perfectly okay. Perfectly okay. To allow that, whatever that may be for you, to disconnect a little bit. Because sometimes the ride is a bit turbulent and can feel like you're going over a 100-foot waterfall. Like you're down like this. Oh boy, this is going to be one hell of an ending here. So, the masters have taught and continue to teach, however, even though that's happening, there's still the inner presence, the inner guidance, our own GPS system, if you will, that's guiding the entire process. And so there's the ability to remain still in here, in the midst of chaos that's around us. Best way I know how to do this, to think about it and to think about stillness, is to what? Be still. Be still. It was said, be still and know that I am God. I read recently, it expounded on this presence, or this message. Be still and know that I am God. And then you back it up a little bit. Be still and know that I am. You back it up a little bit more. Be still and know. One more time. Be still. And the final one? Be. So, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, we got